Hi everyone, it's Cara from Enchanted Vines and I'm coming to you with another free tutorial that has a corresponding wreath kit if you're interested. So today we're going to be doing a hot pink hydrangea wreath. It's going to be crescent style. And for these kits, it is all included with the exception of having your own glue gun and wire cutters. But everything else is going to be included in the kit, including our wreath. So to start off, we're going to clean up our wreath. Now, sometimes people like things to look a little wild and have the leaves in them. I choose to remove these just because if we're going to be gluing into something that is already decomposing, that it basically means that our glue doesn't have anything to really like adhere to. So I always recommend removing them. Then we're going to go through and we're going to cut away any strays. And as I'm doing this, I'm gonna assess what the best side of the wreath is. Just like we all have our best side for photos, our wreaths also have a best side. So this is gonna be a crescent style wreath, which means it's, you know, like a crescent moon. It's gonna be half covered. So when looking at this, this is the weaker part of the wreath, okay? This part is nice and full. And if we cover this, you're not gonna notice. One little tip, because this part is really tightly bound, you can take one of these thicker pieces and cut it and then just loosen it, okay? It's gonna make it easier to get your materials in. I would not go crazy cutting off several of them. I would just cut off maybe like one significant binding piece of the grapevine, okay? It just loosens it up. It'll make it easier for designing in the long run. And this one kind of has like shedding to it. Some of them don't, but it's almost like the bark of it is coming off of it. So I usually just like to pull that off, just so people don't feel like you're giving them a wreath that's falling apart. And even though we're not going to be looking at the back, we want to go through quickly and just trim off any pieces that would be sticking out, because that will damage a door. We don't want that. All right, so our wreath is ready to go. To get started, we are going to identify what the top of our wreath is. So like I said, the smaller side is the side I want to cover. So I'm going to find one thick branch up top and we're going to make a hook. So your kit's going to include even like these little details. So we're going to take our grapevine wire, we're going to feed it through that thick piece. Okay, we don't want to have it go like through here and have a small hook. We just want to have it just hanging from the top. Okay, that way it'll hang nicely, hang straight. And all we're doing is we're just twisting the ends like so. And then I spin it so that that kind of like messier looking part is underneath. And then because this grapevine wire, it blends so easily, I'm just gonna mark it with a bow. If you're selling wreaths, your buyers will appreciate it because it just gives you a guide as to how to hang it, okay? Or if you're gifting it. Whoever it's going to will appreciate it. It's all about the details. All right, so to get started, I am going to be using, this is an 18-inch grapevine, okay? And actually, let me just clean this up a little bit more. So it needs a little bit of like a haircut. So this is an 18-inch grapevine wreath. By the time we're done building it out, it's probably gonna be between like 22 and 24 inches, depending on how airy we make the greenery. Okay, and then to be securing my materials, we're gonna be using this glue pan, which has cooled down a little bit, so it's gonna heat back up. It's gonna be like a syrupy consistency when we're done. So what I like to do is I glue as I go. It's a very hands-on or hands-free experience. Instead of having to pick up your glue gun, pick it up, put it down. And then at the end, we're gonna use our glue gun just to do some finishing touches, okay? So to start, we are going to prep our ficus leaves. So for the purpose of this video, we're gonna use 3 of these ficus leaves at the most. In your kit, I always pack a couple extra just because sometimes when something feels off, and it needs just like a little bit of zhuzhing. I find that greenery is the easiest way to do that without, you know, really bogging yourself down with the flowers. So what we're gonna do is I cut the two sides off, and then this middle piece is just too long for what we're gonna be using it for. So I'm gonna go halfway down, cut this one, and then make a second cut, which I call the nubbin. And I try and sort those out just because the pointier ones have a different impact, okay? So we're gonna go through again, cut the sides, and then in the middle, cut it right around the halfway point. And then our nubbin. Now we're gonna do that with the third one. I'm gonna cut actually this one's missing a leaf. I'll use this for something else. Oh, nothing like unrehearsed videos. So, okay, this one has all three on it. So I'm gonna cut the side, cut the other side, and then with our middle one, we're gonna cut at the halfway point. And then we're gonna cut our nubbin and put it to the side because it's a good filler. Now for this wreath recipe, it's pretty standard. It's one that I find it just comes together really easily. It lays out the structure for you. So the first thing that we're gonna do with our supplies is we're going to set a parameter using our foliage. Okay. So I'm gonna go in with only the pointy greens. We're gonna establish the top. I'm super OCD, and so when I do something, typically I'm going to do it twice on a wreath, and the benefit of that is that you maintain balance with what you're doing. So we have one up top, one on bottom. Then we're going to go to the middle section of our wreath using only the pointy leaves. And we're going to put one in and it's tilted upward. And then we're gonna put a second one in and we're gonna have it pointing downward. And if you notice on the bottom half of the wreath, I usually feed the stems upward because they're more likely to catch, as opposed to when I'm putting things on the top half, I feed it downward. Now we're just gonna take two more and set how far out we plan on building this crescent design. I'm gonna do one up top. Everything's very malleable. These are really high quality ficus leaves. These are from Pioneer. These are like a staple in my designing, and I highly recommend people stock up on them. The more you buy, the cheaper they get in price, and I just don't think you're ever gonna waste them. Okay. So this is our starting stage, okay? So we have our highest point, our lowest point, and then our widest point. Okay. Now we're gonna take our two hydrangea blooms, which are our focal blooms. These have leaves on them. These are gonna get in our way, so we're just gonna pull them off, or you can cut them off. And I'm gonna take the first bloom, dip it in my glue. On the top portion of this, I am going to feed this through. Now this has really thick stems, so the fact that this part on the side of the wreath is also very tight is going to make it a little bit of a challenge to work it through. But the first bloom is here, facing inward. And then on the bottom half, I'm going to take our second bloom. Let's see. I think I'm at this wreath's mercy, so let's see how it's going to go. Okay. And I'm going to have this one facing outward a bit, okay? When flowers grow in nature, they grow towards the sun, so not everything is up and down, straight as an arrow. So we want to have some of that filter into our design to give it that natural feel. All right. Now we're going to be using some of these pale peonies. They have like a little bit of a tangerine in the middle. The heads of these are very pretty. The foliage, not so much. So if you like it, obviously leave it on. I don't care for it. I think it makes the overall product look a little cheaper. So I'm going to remove them. And I'm just going to discard those. There's no, I don't see a use for those. All right, so starting at the top again, top corner, I'm going to feed my peony in. And now it's almost touching or barely touching this hydrangea, but it's not like crammed against it. We don't want that like tense design. We're gonna go underneath and repeat that same step. Again, like barely touching, respectfully nuzzling, however you want to say it. And then we're gonna go in with our white peonies. And I don't mind this foliage. I think because the color is a little bit more natural looking. So I'm going to take my first white peony, put it up top. Take my second white peony, put it down below. There you go. And so you can see in just like the first few steps, we already have a lot going on. Now it's almost like just filling in the bare spot. So this is why, like, when you get a recipe that you really like, it's helpful because muscle memory kicks in and you just do things almost on autopilot a bit. Just changing up what the materials are, what the textures are you're going to use, things like that. All right, so for the middle, let's see. We're going to use these cabbage roses, and I don't recall the shade offhand, but what I love is they almost look cream. I don't know if you can, this isn't really showing it, but it's almost got like a tiny, tiny like kiss of pale pink in it. So like this is cream, and this just has this little bit of a tinge to it that I just love. So we're going to go in between our hydrangeas, and we're going to do a grouping or a clustering of cabbage roses. So I'm going to put one. Then we're going to take one of the small blooms. Two. And then we're going to take one of our larger blooms again and make it three. So you can see this like little invisible line, like this trail that's going with these cabbage roses. Now we have some pale ranunculus. And these also come in groupings. So we have a large bloom and a little bloom. I like the foliage. I'm just going to push it up to get it out of the way a little bit. And we'll go in with these. With my designs, I like to always have the larger blooms in the middle, and then I like for things to thin out towards the end. Just kind of cascading down. So I'm going to repeat that step. Put the larger bloom in first. Pushing up the foliage. We're going to have the smaller bloom trail off. Okay. Now we're going to go in and do some filling. Okay, so I'm going to put, there'll be a third of these pale peonies in your kit. So I'm going to take the flower off. And I'm going to back this in between the hydrangeas. Actually, we have two of them, so these are going to go on either side of this cabbage rose. Okay. Now we're going to take our excess ficus leaves And we're going to start to put them in. So you can see it's always helpful to like really take a good step back and assess where the holes are, where things maybe aren't balanced. So again, like that's why I like to do the extra ficus leaves, because like right here it already looks to me like it's going to be a little out of balance with this bottom part. So let's go ahead and just correct that right now. How are we doing? The angle. And now for our little like nubbing guys, we're gonna go and we're gonna place these in between our blooms. In gardens, things don't have, you know, real specific boundaries. They grow within one another and around one another, and I just think that's part of what makes them so beautiful. So we want to try and recreate that look by having pieces that disrupt our flower placement a little bit. So I'm very curious for people who are interested in the kits. If you're designing for yourself, if you're a maker. If you're a maker, I think one of the benefits of the kits is that you get to sample products and also methods to assess like what you like and what you don't like. And if you're doing it for yourself or with friends for fun, I think that's pretty cool too. So it's almost like your own private wreath workshop. All right. We're going to be using half of this filler bush. And for this also, I'm not a fan of the foliage. It just kind of throws the rest off. So I'm just going to pull that down and remove them. And I want to put these in prominent areas where they're going to get the attention that they deserve. Again, interrupting things. Having things kind of look like organized chaos is like my goal. You know what? I think we're going to use a whole filler bush for this. I feel like it needs a little bit more. So let's go ahead and prep the rest of this bush. And again, we're going to remove the leaves. I love all these different like shades of pink. Very pretty. All right, so let's go right back in. I think it's always helpful to try and go, you know, up and down, just making sure that you're maintaining that balance, because if you kind of start from the top and work your way down, by the time you get to the bottom, you might find out that you don't have enough materials, and then you'll have to start moving stuff around. So it's a good way to just make sure that things remain balanced. So pretty. I love a good filler bush. These are like the details that I think makes designing unique. right, and then the last thing that we have are these chartreuse berries, and I just pull them apart and then snip the middle one. And I love the quality of these berries because it's hard to find them where they're not, you know, really like paper thin and foamy. These do have foam centers. However, they're very sturdy and they have a nice thick coating on them. So they do well when you do like a UV protectant spray. Or if they get wet. Like all my designs are made for, they can go inside, but they're designed to withstand like elements outside. Since I'm in New England, that means that they have to really tolerate a lot. Because I don't pull my wreath in and out when there's rain. Like today we're going to have a thunderstorm. Put some glue on my finger. Okay, and now you just start to scan it for gaps or anything that looks out of place. So here I see that there's a bit of a hole. So we're going to go in with our ficus. Just address that. And there we go. I mean, we're just at like the 21-minute mark. And we're pretty much done. All right, so the last few steps for polishing, we're going to take all of these stems off the back of our wreath. Okay. And as you can see, that's the part I dipped in the glue. So if I'm pulling off the part with the glue, then what's holding them on? Not much. So we're gonna go and trim all these, and then we're gonna take our glue gun and follow up with some glue to make sure that they're secured to our base. I always recommend it's better to leave stems too long and have to trim them than to cut them too short, because then if you cut them too short, they're not ruined, but you have to put them on a pick and use floral tape to just have it adhere. So it's easier to do it this way, I think, to maintain that, you know, no product is damaged. I'm gonna go in with our preserved moss. Okay, so it's natural moss, preserved, dried out. And then I'm just going to go and glue all these ends. You can see this is high temp glue, which I recommend. Some people with full sun, or if they're putting this in between storm doors, the sun can actually melt the glue. So this is Gorilla Glue. I've had really good luck with it, and I just think this is a really good product. All right. So I like to go around and do all of it. That way it's not piping hot when I go to put the moss over it. It's had a little time. It's still tacky enough, but it's not going to burn me. But I'm still cautious. You definitely don't want to touch the glue. So in your kit, even the moss is included. So it's really like all the details. Again, it's just not the glue gun, glue, or wire cutters. All right. So the last polishing steps to this would be, I'm going to take a warm blow dryer. Like I just have, you know, like a regular household hair dryer, and I go through and I use this on a medium heat just to kind of have some of the glue hairs. Sometimes they'll just like to the materials. It's very technical and scientific, I know. Or you can go in with your hands and just kind of pull at them, but I feel like doing both is a good way to make sure that you're really like clearing out the glue hairs. And then I use the Krylon UV protectant spray. I recommend everybody get this. I get mine at Michael's. I think it's like $12 a can, and you know there's coupons and all that stuff. But before any of my wreaths get shipped out, I do a treatment. If somebody ever gives me a heads up that they're in direct sunlight, I'll do several applications of it. I'll give it some time to dry, and then I'll go back in. But spray it for a good 20-30 seconds. I always do extra on the greenery because greenery is the first thing to show signs of sun damage. It turns blue, and once it turns blue, it's just not a good look. So I'm going to do that, and then that is it. So I hope you like this wreath tutorial, and again, the kit's going to be available on my site. My direct site is at www.enchantedvines.com. And I'd love to know if there are any type of kits or tutorials that you'd love to see in the future. So let me know. Thank you.